Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show with your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, sir. How are you doing, Mr. Bober?
I'm doing well, Mr. Marcelino. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Good. Well, living off some coffee.
All right.
This afternoon.
Are we well caffeinated?
We're firing on L8, as they say in the motor world.
That's right. Well, if you have an 8-cylinder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not too many people have that anymore.
Not anymore. No.
I'm firing on all 4.
That's bad if you have a 6.
Yeah. And there's an electric motor under the hood, too.
Well, there you go.
So there you go.
Awesome. Hey, it got you here.
Yes, it did.
And it's a nice ride. So I like that.
Yes. We got to say our thank yous.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you to everybody listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
That's right.
And
tell your friend to tell a friend.
Yes.
Thank you in advance for that. So,
Yeah, and thank you for the great emails. We're getting, we get the good stuff. We one sad note, and then the anniversary of a sad note.
Right.
The first sad note is Brian Farmer.
Tech for Warren Haynes.
Yes, passed away.
And Allman Brothers. Yeah, he was a nice guy, man. He could have been Warren's brother. He looked like Warren's brother.
When I saw them, you got a real good glimpse of him if you lived in Maryland and you went to the Hot August Blues Festival that one year when Government Mule played. And he came out, and he was out there. They were switching guitars, and the lights were kind of still up.
Right, which is what techs do.
Yeah. But, I mean, usually the lights are down a little bit. You could totally see this guy, and I said to my wife, I was like, I wonder if he has a brother.
They did look like brothers.
Looked like him, walked like him, even talked like him.
Yeah.
When they did interviews with him, close your eyes, you thought you were hearing Warren. So, but very, very cool dude. And how sad. I mean, just, to pass away. He wasn't old at all.
No, and I'm guessing this was pretty unexpected.
Yeah,
Still waiting to hear a little more in the detail department.
Yes. But, Twitter blew up. All the artists were just
Facebook blew up too.
Yeah,
it did.
Yeah, and not to take away from that or anything, our prayers go out to his family. But
absolutely,
this is the anniversary of Stevie Ray Vaughan's death today.
Right,
and that was somebody that you knew.
I met him, knew him for a while.
Did some work for him.
Yeah, knew him way too short of a time.
Really.
I was working with him and his tech. We've mentioned it before. Rene Martinez.
Yes,
was working with those guys. But yeah, when I met Stevie, he was already clean and sober, and just one hell of a nice guy, man. Just a really nice guy, and really liked and appreciated the gear that I built for him. And that was another way too early and unexpected.
Yeah.
Was that that was 90. So what was this? The
24th. Yes. 24th anniversary
of his death.
And now, so like events that happen in people's lives, we all remember that moment that you got the news. Now, what were you doing at that time? Because I totally remember this.
Remember what you were doing?
I remember like it was yesterday.
I was working as a calibration technician at an aerospace company, and I was in work when I heard. I guess we had radios on or something in work when I heard.
So you were doing the double thing. You were doing that, and you were building amps and doing your deal.
Right. My the repair and modification business, which at that time was Precision Audio Tailoring.
Pat, yeah.
Yeah, Pat.
Yep.
I was doing that nights and weekends. And right around that time, I had somewhat before that time, I had built an amp for Stevie and a couple of really unique 4x12s, and I always used to, I did one of the first that I knew of fuzz face repros, because Dunlap had done theirs, and it really wasn't like the original. And everybody was saying, "Oh, you got to have the original." So I actually
germanium resistors or something like that.
The early ones were germanium transistors,
yes.
And then later ones were silicon transistors. But I had researched and got the closest to. I think initially I had some NOS, but then I found the closest like part that I could to the original germaniums, and I actually did the boards the same way, same layout, same everything. And Stevie used to use fuzz faces all the time. And
I heard they used to change them out during the show.
Well, they could. I mean, and those things were really finicky. Different ones would sound better at different temperatures, different days and things like that.
Yeah.
And they were not really stable. So
weird.
it's like, which one sounds good today in this venue, But
it's like a guitar.
Renee just wanted to have some more like boards and stuff built up for these things, because maybe the newer transistors were a little more stable. So, he would ask, "Hey man, can we get a couple of those boards, for the fuzz face things? Because, the pots are generally okay, and
sure.
you don't need the enclosure. But, I used to give them boards for the old style fuzz faces. But back to your question, I was in work. I was at the bench when I heard. I was listening to. I think I was listening to the original WHFS at the time, and I had heard
99.1.
Yes, and I called in to talk to one of the DJs, because I think they said, if anybody knows him or knew him or anything, and I think I called in and said, "Hey, I've been working with him. I built stuff for him." So about 5 minutes from that point, I was on the air on WHFS talking about Stevie.
Huh.
So that's where I was.
That's wild.
Where were you?
And now I was coming out of work, and I was a surveyor at the time, a property line surveyor.
Mm-hmm.
Not as, I wasn't modding anything at the time. But I remember I came out, and the guy I worked with goes, Did you hear? And I was like, "No, what?" And he said, "Man, he was killed last night, And I was like, "What? What?" And now I was fortunate enough, I actually got to see him on the Couldn't Stand the Weather tour.
Nice.
And that was a wild show. I mean, that was drug days, Stevie Ray Vaughan, but I mean, it was still, just that band was just so incredible.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that I was coming out, and a friend of mine stopped me and said, "Hey, did you hear this?" And I was like, "No." And he told me, I was like, "Nah, You always wonder. You go, come on,
You must have heard wrong.
And then I went and I turned on 98 Rock, and they were all over it. They were talking about it and everything. Now, what's interesting is there's a guy that works with my wife. His name's Jay Philpott.
I spoke to Jay about this.
Yeah. Now he actually saw the wreckage,
the crash site,
and saw the bodies.
Yes,
he was there, like when they discovered that the helicopter, because that helicopter crashed. They didn't find it till the next day, right? And that because it was foggy,
right?
And it slammed in. There was no explosion. There was no fire. It just
hard
crashed.
to believe, but
yeah, it just crashed in, and just like a car accident that doesn't have fire, it stopped running. But everybody inside, because we're fragile and helicopters not really designed to take impacts,
right?
They perished in that. But yeah, he was there. So we'll have to. I talked to him and I said, "Would you want to come on and talk about it?" He said, "Yeah." So we'll have to have him on one day to give his reenactment or recounter.
Yeah, I didn't realize this was the anniversary. Had I realized that, we could have
had him
probably.
On.
Put two and two together and have him on today for the anniversary.
Yeah, but. Well, I think he's a little tied up at this moment because he works on this as we're recording this.
Oh, he's on air.
He's on air.
Okay.
So we'll get him. We'll work it out.
Sure.
We'll get that story because I mean that's a guy that That's a guy that saved blues, basically.
Right.
Was Stevie Ray. So, you know. But on a different note, today is Alex Lifeson's birthday.
Well, happy birthday.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex, if you get wind of this show, we'd love to talk to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the thing I always say to people is if you're not a Rush fan, you got to see the documentary.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but you've told me about it.
It is the most compelling story I've ever heard in my life. I mean, it revolves around the band. It really does. But that section that they talk about Neil and what happened to him with his wife and his daughter, and then that trip, you know, that just where he just got on that motorcycle and basically drove 50,000 miles. The Geddy and Alex were like, the band's done. You know,
right. They weren't going to go on without him.
Well, no, not at all. And he goes, and it was funny because Geddy goes, well, he is the new guy.
Because they had an
original drummer,
right.
And it was funny that, you know, after 30 plus 40 years, whatever, you know, he says this and he goes, so I guess we had to kind of wait for him.
That's like Mick and Keith saying that Ronnie's the new guy.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
So they thought the band was over. Neil did his trek from Canada down to the bottom of South America, back up to Canada again, and then across. And just like something out of a movie, he said, it's time to go back. So he called them up, and they did not have a clue. They were like, this is crazy. They had kept in touch with him on the road, but none of that mentioned up. You know, none of that was said. And then he said, yeah, it's time to go back. And they were like, okay. So that's what they did, and they put it back together. And he started taking drum lessons again, which, you know, wow, right?
Yeah.
Well, he did it in a different way. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do these rudiments or something.
Right.
It was, I forget who the guy was. I'm not, you know, I don't follow too many drummers, but the guy was an old jazz guy, I guess. And he was they would talk about in this philosophy and how you play and being more fluid. So they got away from the click and just kind of let it just happen naturally. And Neil said it was it was a lot mechanical. So it took the other two a little bit to get used to, but then they fell right into it. So I don't think they use a click for everything. I think some songs they have to, but I think most of the songs they kind of do open now.
That's great. You know, it must suck to be tied to a click for everything. It's just, you know, you can't let your emotion run too much with that. You know,
not at all.
It can't be that fulfilling.
Well, what's weird is that you know, think about when you have to think about things.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So you got to stay in time. Now, if you come out of time, they got to dump it. You have to dump the click unless there's some of them they can actually sequence to the drum, to the snare drum or to the bass drum. There's some software out there that will kind of keep them in check, so you can put that human variance in there, so it's not 100% accurate.
Right.
It can move up and down, but you know, still, you gotta.
Well, I mean, you know, I
stay in the ballpark.
I think if you're good,
it just disappears.
And you come out of time with the click,
you go right back in.
Yeah, I think you can fall right back in, and no one's the wiser.
No,
you know,
because they're not hearing the click.
Exactly, they don't have that reference.
No,
point, you know,
just the drummer.
Right.
The guys in a band don't even hear it. Yeah, the other guys. So
well, they might, you know, and that would make it even worse.
Oh my God!
Because they're putting everything through in-ears now, and you know, I know guys that are, you know, got to listen to that through in-ears because there's cues and all that. It's like, just let me play.
Yeah,
just let me play.
Now, one last thing. Okay. I heard Adam Carolla talking about this today, and they were talking about EDM, electronic dance music.
Yes.
Some of these DJs are making $40 million a year. They're DJs.
Spinning other people's material. Well, they get creative with it. I'll give them that. They do get creative with it, but, you know.
Yeah. So, and then Adam, you know, goes on a rant about, you know, you go into a steakhouse and there's electronic dance music, blasting. He goes, I'm sitting down, it's an $80 steak, and I can't hear myself think. And when I tell the girl, where's the Dean Martin or some Sinatra or, some classical music, they're like, well, this is what everybody wants. And he goes, yeah, not at 10 o'clock at night.
No. I'd rather hear a Buddy Rich drum solo.
Exactly. So I started to ask myself a couple things because I have a 15-year-old son. Mm-hmm. He listens to this stuff, this EDM, and also it's Skrillex. Mm-hmm. What do they call that? Dubstep.
Right.
Okay, so I love the names.
Dubstep, man.
I was in a real heavy band, and people used to come up, and I used to go, and they used to go, "What's your style of music?" I said, "Heavy metal." I thought my bass player was going to kill me. He goes, "We don't play heavy metal, dude." And I was like, "Is that an embarrassment?" I was like, "What do you mean? We're as heavy as it gets." I'm like, "What are you talking? We're a growing." I just love when they put names to it because I go, okay. So anyway,
rock. It's like rock.
Yeah,
hard rock.
Yeah,
real hard.
So I understood a little bit about Adam's point. I mean, he goes from one extreme to the other. He says he looks at it as like if you're not playing an instrument or doing something in that, if you're not creating this thing,
right
now, not that these guys don't create, because they do have to be a little artistic to mesh things together, and
they don't create, they manipulate.
Yeah, exactly.
They manipulate.
So he put it in the sense of painting. He goes, I look at a guy that paints orbs and go, well, with some practice, I can take your job over. He goes, but when you see a guy that can do the human hand, and you can see the veins and the and it looks like you can't tell it's a photograph, if it's a photograph or it's an actual painting. He goes, that to me is a true artist. And then I was thinking of it in that, and he was thinking of it in this musical way that if it's 5 guys that have been sweating on the road, for 25 years, honing everything that they do to make music.
Shouldn't they be making the 40 million?
And it's like, what are we doing? And he said it, and I agree with this. It's like everything, especially with the younger crowd, everything's got to be better than, or it's got to be more intense than the last version that you just heard.
I was going to say, please don't use the word better here.
No, I meant,
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's got to be more intense. It's got to be more this.
More stimulated.
Yeah, it's like so much stimulation that it's almost like, well, I've had just 28 shots of espresso, but it's what has happened is it's just mind-numbing and it's gone.
It desensitizes.
Yeah, and then
I think it does.
And then he goes one step further, and I hate to be quoting from Adam, but this is the point. He said, you're starting to see 53-year-old men wearing, $300 jeans because they want to fit in with the crowd that, and he says, stop trying and don't say that you like the music. He goes, the music's shit. And he goes, and it is. He goes, the only reason you're saying it is because you don't want to look like you're older to that crowd. And I say, well, look, you can buy the jeans, but... Exactly. Don't buy into the crap and try to say that, hey, I'm the hip guy that's still 25 years old. And
you're not, and the rest of the crowd knows you're not.
Yeah. And honestly, I just say, I look at it this way, and of course it's all personal opinion. But it's like, admire the guys that actually work at the craft.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I think all of our fans are
I think the people that are actually into music and appreciate music do honor those guys that actually put
especially guitar players.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that like or claim they like EDM, I really don't think they could have much of a true appreciation for real music in the first place if they're claiming that they like this so much. Okay, maybe you do like it so much, but do you know where it comes from? Do you know where all this stuff is pulled from? And do you like the original material? If you like the original material and you like what some DJ is doing to it, well, fine. I mean, it's not my cup of tea. There's no accounting for taste. But if you don't know where the original stuff came from and you don't appreciate music, but you say you like this, I don't get that. There's something like a soul missing.
Yeah, it's almost like they're dead inside.
It's really, And what I don't get it.
And what happens is you kind of get that whole the minion thing where you just follow the. It's like
Lemmings.
Here's the new trend, and I'm going over here. And
Lemmings.
Then, yeah,
right to the sea. I don't get a lot of it, but I don't get that. But I really do think that you can like that, and like the music that it came from, real music generated by real musicians. But if you just like that. Then you don't get music. Mm-mm. You don't get it.
No.
You don't get it. But, to each his own. And, that brings us around to...
It sure does.
That brings us around to guest time, talking about real music and on the road and people that really appreciate music. This guy and the people he plays with are real musicians.
Yeah.
Quite large. Musicians. And, I don't know that they appreciate the EDM, but maybe we'll ask them.
Right.
So,
what the hell acronym is that?
If he does that, I'm going, all right, good. You're good. You're safe.
You can't have
you don't even know what it is. You're great.
He goes, you can't have my pin.
No. So, anyway, without further ado, we are going to bring on the line with us guitarist extraordinaire for Sheryl Crow, Mr. Peter Stroud.
Hey guys, this is Case Shepard from Soundcheck Nashville. If you're ever in Nashville, be sure to look us up for any of your backline, rehearsal, storage, or cartage needs. And be sure to keep it tuned here to Amps and Axes and listen to these guys because they know what they're talking about.
All right, and as promised, we have with us on air or by the wonders of Skype technology, guitarist to Sheryl Crow, and many other things, Mr. Peter Stroud. Peter, how are you, man?
Great. How's it going, guys?
It's going fantastic.
We're doing good.
Yeah. You are you currently touring or having musical fun out there with Sheryl?
Yes, we are currently touring, and I'm home at the moment. I am home for the next week and a half.
Oh, nice. Nice to have a break.
Yes, which is really, really great. But we've been having a blast. We were just out on the West Coast, and I was out there for 2 weeks. Spent a few days off in AaA catching up with my partner Dan Bull with 65 Amps and a bunch of other friends. And then otherwise, we've been playing a host of shows that are headline dates for Sheryl, and then she has also been doing shows on the bill with Rascal Flatts this summer.
Oh, very nice, very nice. I think a couple of people might have heard of those guys.
Yeah,
yeah. She signed to Warner Nashville now and is embracing the whole country scene and has lived in Nashville for quite a while. And our new band is primarily based in Nashville. I'm the only guy not in Nashville at the moment. So.
Wow.
I think Cheryl's one of those ones that could go, I want to do a concert for 80,000 people, and they would have 110,000 people lined up.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I was talking about that to a friend of mine today. I was because I told him we were going to be interviewing Peter, and I said, it's like she's not in your face as an artist. Some of those bigger acts are, you're always hearing them.
Right.
You know exactly who she is. And then she does a concert and you're like, well, that was pretty interesting that 80,000 people were at this.
She has a decent bit of longevity at this point.
A little bit. Yes.
Yeah, just a little bit. And, speaking of longevity, let's go back a little bit, Peter. Let's, take me back to your beginning. Where did you start? And what did you start on or with? And what brought you to music?
Well, how far back do you want to go? Because I'm pretty ancient.
We'll go as far back as you want to go, man. I mean, you can go first guitar. A lot of guys go, oh, my first guitar was, whatever. Wherever you want to take us from.
As far as where I began making a living at it, put it that way. I grew up in North Carolina, in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
And in the early 80s, after I completed a couple of years of college there, I went to music school at UNCG, University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And, after a couple of years, I got antsy and I just wanted to get back out and play, and had been through Atlanta before. And it was such a cool music scene, and it was near home. It was only 6 hours away at the time. So that was an easy jump. And so I've been here since the early 80s. And, have been playing with various bands here. And then in the mid-90s, I always thought it was where you would be sort of trying to jump on the coattails of somebody that was already successful. I was, really hoping to get a career in music. And, what it turned out to be is just everybody around you, all your buds that are sort of climbing up their own ladder, and everybody sort of helps each other out. And one of those being my bud, Brendan O'Brien, who, is a great guitarist, and he had been on the Atlanta scene and was known as the guy to produce records for all of the bands and upcoming artists around Atlanta.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he had his day producing the Black Crowes, and soon after Stone Temple. Well, he didn't produce the Crowes initially. He engineered their first record, and that put him on the map. And then he did produce Stone Temple Pilots, and of course that's a whole other story there. He took off from there with Pearl Jam. And so in 95, he started his own label called 57 Records that was under Def American, under Rick Rubin.
Oh, okay.
And with 57, his first artist he signed was Pete Droge, for which a good friend of mine engineered the record and hipped me to it, and I became a complete fan of Pete when his first record came out. That was called Necktie Second. And about 6 months later, when June of 95 hit, Brendan calls me one day out of the blue, and he goes, "Hey, do you have your passport?" And I just happened to have acquired a passport a few months earlier because I went to Music Messe.
Okay. Germany.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other story. So that was the whole other reason. But thank you, Mike Matthews. Because of him, I had my passport. And Brendan goes, "Well, great, because ever heard of Pete Droge? He's going to Europe in a week and needs a guitarist."
Wow.
And so I said, "Great." And I said, "That's great, but I can't rehearse. I'm a big fan. I'll be there. I'll play. I'll know the stuff." And the reason I couldn't rehearse is we had already promised to take our nephew to Disney World, our 9-year-old nephew, who was already en route down to Atlanta, and I couldn't break his heart by saying, "Well, I can't take you now." So
that's a good uncle.
They thought that was great. They were all for that, so they sent me cassette tapes. It was still cassettes at the time, to Disney World down in Florida, and I learned all the stuff and flew straight from Florida to Cologne, Germany.
Wow.
And we did a 30 day tour, or month-long tour. First show was at Rock im Ring in front of about 40,000 people.
Here's another guy, baptism by fire.
Yeah.
My goodness, we just ran through the beginning or the endings of the songs in the room trailer right before we went on stage.
Wow.
And it was crazy. And from then on, I was with Pete for 3 years and did 2 records, which Brendan produced. 2 more records, that Pete had during his time with Brendan. And then from there, it's a small community. We toured with a lot of great people. We toured with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers for 2 months.
Awesome.
Which was a real eye-opener. That was incredible.
His new album, by the way, is phenomenal.
Yes,
I love it. I love it.
It really is. I think it's great, too, as just about everything he puts out. And so I think I personally watched about 20 or so shows off of that tour.
Nice.
So it was like going to school. And then also we went out with Neil Young and Crazy Horse for an entire month.
Wow.
All the way across Canada from west to east. And so you can imagine what that was like, playing, on his home turf.
Mm-hmm.
And then also during that time, we toured with Sheryl for a month. And that's how I met Sheryl.
Oh.
So then 3 years later, when her third record was coming out, her management called and offered me the gig, and I've been with her ever since.
That is awesome.
That is amazing. Isn't
How long now?
15 years for the better part of.
Wow. Now I got to ask Peter. We talked to Rich Eckhart.
Rich Eckhart.
And
Toby Keith's guitar player.
Yes, I'm sorry. And he said his first gig was 80,000 people at a festival. And I asked him, I said, what was that like? Did everything kind of clinch up? So I'm going to ask you, when you did your first 40,000 person gig, what was that like? I mean, did you kind of go, like...
I can't do this.
Did you have that half a second, like, well, it's either do or die?
While it was going down, because everything was so fresh and I was just trying to play with a band, the main thing I was trying to do was just not screw up, especially because the drummer here, I had played with bands in Atlanta that were, more up tempo. I'll put it that way. I had an instrumental band at the time, and pretty fast paced stuff. And so here's Pete Droge, who's just super laid back, and then he had this drummer at the time, Dan McCarroll, who I believe now is the president of Warner Music out in L.A. or something.
Wow.
But he was a drummer that probably played 50 feet behind the beat, just really laid back,
50 feet behind the beat. I love that.
So I came out like gangbusters and went, whoa, and just throw the brakes on, and all I was concerned about is I didn't want them to think I couldn't play with them, And so, but I tell you, after the first, it was only a 30-minute set, and I had rubber legs coming off of the stage.
Wow.
After playing in front of that many people and just the whole experience. And then there was a guy on as I came off stage, cameraman, he goes, "You look good on TV." And, come to find out that it was being broadcast live over German MTV.
Oh, my God. Wow. It's probably good you didn't know that.
The double whammy, yeah, man.
It was good I didn't know. It was good I was distracted.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, when you go into a situation like that, I have to assume it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you don't want to overplay or showboat or anything, because it's probably not going to be appropriate. Yet you don't want to
not give them what you want.
Play enough for them to think that you're just not up to the task,
Exactly.
And there's such a fine line that you would have to walk, I think, until everybody gets to know you and knows what your ability is.
And we've talked about this. Remember, you said there was many a guy that you've met, but they can't do, they give you the whole deck of cards every time.
Yeah.
And you said it's these guys like Peter that know when to hold that back, know their place, sort of. That's
and that's tough on a baptism by fire gig. It's like, shit, did we just hire the wrong guy? Okay, so obviously you passed the audition, and that was a good, I would think, good experience, 30-day tour for you.
Yes, it was pretty unbelievable, because we were playing, and Pete was writing on a hit single at the time. He had this song, "If You Don't Love Me, I'll Kill Myself." That was on the...
it's a real upper.
Yeah, right. It's a rocking song. You'll have to pull it up. It's really cool. And so it got some traction because it was in the Dumb and Dumber movie in the soundtrack.
Oh, nice.
There you go. I love that movie.
Snowball scene. When you see the snowball fight scene.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I know that now. I remember that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, he was getting all these great festival dates over in Europe. And we played the Pink Pop and both in Germany, the first one that was Rock am Ring, that was at their Nürburgring racetrack.
Love that racetrack.
Yeah, and then the Rock am Fest, which was at the Munich Stadium, that was the second day gig.
Wow.
So for me, it was a mind blower. And then we'd go from those kind of shows into clubs. They had both club dates and these big festival dates.
Yeah, that seems to be the case with a lot of European tours, especially, when the weather's nice. You'll do big, huge stadium things, and then you'll go into a club somewhere for a couple of days,
Isn't it wild?
Yeah. But I think it's cool.
And I remember one club in particular that was just, I think it was it was somewhere in Germany, and it was just this small little hole-in-the-wall place. By showtime, the humidity was so thick, it just caked up on the finish of my guitar and froze one of the volume knobs. It was crazy.
Wow.
Where you go from that atmosphere, and then all of a sudden you're on this gigasmo stage. So it was a real eye-opener. And then, needless to say, we had a complete blast. Pete is still one of my best friends, and the whole band was really cool. And so it was still probably or definitely one of the most memorable experiences I've had ever.
It would have to be.
Now, guitar-wise, what were you using during that? Was that Strat?
No, I had the same Tele Custom that I still use. It's a 76 natural finish Tele Custom. This is the one with the humbucker in the front.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And a 57 Les Paul Custom that is the P90 version. I still have it as well.
Yeah, I know that version.
Yeah. You still have that one too, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
I bought that years back from Thoroughbred Music down in Tampa, Florida.
Heard of Thoroughbreds?
Oh, yeah.
For those guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those guys are...
Now, did you purchase that as a vintage guitar, or did you purchase it so far back it was just an old guitar?
It was a vintage guitar, but it was before they went through the roof. Mm-hmm. And also, it's what I call a headstock casualty. It had a repaired headstock. Mm-hmm. Which, to me, I look for that. For one, you get a good price, and it's already broken. You don't have to worry about it.
Right. It's already been broken. Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you're going to buy it for a player and not a collector, if it's done right, you don't have to worry about it. They're fantastic.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't want to pay vintage collectible piece price and then have to go out on the road with it, especially in conditions like that. It's guitars do need to be played. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
They shouldn't be hung on a wall or put in a box somewhere. They really do need to be played. But if you can avoid paying a vintage price or something and then taking it out on the road,
that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, because it's gonna feel and play as good as one that didn't have a repair.
Yeah,
and why not?
Yeah, and you know what's so weird about that whole headstock thing, and not to get off topic too much, all that needs to be done is get rid of the nut that they have at the end of the, where the truss rod adjustment is. That's a nut on a Les Paul. So it's a nut that you have to put a big driver on, so they have to channel out a huge amount of wood, and that's why they snap, right?
You think that's the weak point, really?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Because if you look at a cross section, there is no wood.
Not a lot of wood behind that nut. Yeah,
they used to put a volute back through the 70s and all, and that helped it a lot actually from breaking. Mm-hmm. If they would just get rid of that, put an Allen wrench like Fender, they could make that channel smaller. It would add so much more strength to that area. And those headstock, because the Asian guitars, the Epiphones, they're made the other way. They have the smaller channel, and they have less breaks.
Well, makes sense now that you say it.
But it's such a traditional instrument; they kind of just the same status quo, man. They just keep going that way. And I guess it's good money for guys who repair headstocks,
right? And then people like Peter can get a great guitar, with a couple dollars knocked off,
So there you go.
That's great.
Exactly. So I'm happy about it. The latest one that I'm using is a 65 Firebird 3.
Oh, nice.
That's the exact same thing. It was a headstock casualty.
Wow.
And it's great. And it's a rare one. It has P90s on it. So it's perfect.
Wow.
Alley.
Yeah, You seem to be, I guess, between the P90s and the there's P90s on your
Les Paul.
On the Les Paul, that's a deluxe, right? Yeah, that's the deluxe.
Well, it was a custom.
It's a custom.
57.
It was the model that preceded the 3 humbucker. And like 57 was the year that the transition year with the Les Paul Custom, where it had the Alnico P90 in the front with those rectangular magnets, and and then the regular P90 in the rear. And then at the beginning of 57, they switched over to the 3 humbuckers.
Wow,
that's cool.
So I always had a thing for that guitar. I remember seeing Mike Nesmith playing one back in his post Monkees days, and who else used one? It's always about your idols that were using the guitars at the time. Leslie West, he used one for a little while, and I thought they were just the most badass looking version of a Les Paul.
Wow.
Yeah.
And with the P90 sound, it was like a glorified Junior. It had that sound, and sure enough, it was, or it is. In fact, I was thinking of bringing it out on this next leg because it's just fun to play.
Yeah,
a lot of bark out of those P90s.
Oh yeah. I love P90s. Some environments they're a bit noisy, but I've always said this. I'm a guy that likes a little bit of that noise in there too. It just sounds real. I love hearing it at the when a real record trails off and you can hear some pickup buzz in the background as a guitar. I like that. I do too. I think perfect sucks. I love the imperfections.
I agree. I was never bothered by all that buzz and everything on Hendrix's Star Spangled Banner.
No.
No. Not at all.
And if you don't like it,
tons. I mean, it's almost as loud as his signal at points.
Right. It would be really sad if somebody went, "No, there's too much buzz in that. We can't use that." And it never came out.
Yeah, exactly.
Remix and gate it. Yeah.
Exactly. Eddie, fix that, will you? That's great.
Cutting off the beginning of every note.
Kramer posted a picture the other day on Facebook of an aerial shot of Woodstock with like the mass of 500 people on the hill and everything. And he said, behind the stage, you can see the little truck I was in recording the entire show for 3 days.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. He's got it little circled on the picture. So there's a little truck.
There's me.
There's me.
Oh, my goodness. I'll have to look for that. You'll have to send me that.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
Yeah, he put it on his Facebook page the other day. All right. So, let's get into the Sheryl thing a little bit.
All right.
When, where...
So, let's see. And at the end of '98, things were starting to wrap up with Droge, where he was ready to take a break from traveling and all that, and was finding that he was more into recording, not as much into the whole touring thing. And sure enough, since then, he's built this beautiful studio in his home. He lives outside of Seattle, West Seattle on Vashon Island. And so he settled in or was about to settle in at that time. It was right at that time that I got a call from Sheryl's management. So sort of dovetailed nicely. And at the end of '98, the first thing I did with her was she was producing a handful of songs for Stevie Nicks for her next record at the time. And then right after that, we jumped right into rehearsals and the tour, which started in January of '99.
Wow.
And that was, again, another year of just amazing experiences, because we started with the European tour and then an American tour. And then during the summer, we did a stadium tour opening for the Rolling Stones across the UK.
Oh, man.
And then the summer was capped off, and I believe it was in September, American Express hosted a show in Central Park and had her, call it Sheryl Crow and Friends, and invited her to invite her friends to put on a show in Central Park. So she had Eric Clapton and Keith Richards, Stevie Nicks, Sarah McLachlan, Chrissie Hynde, the Dixie Chicks.
Wow.
It's
nice friends, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, come on out and play. Come on out and play with us. You know?
It was amazing. So we had 5 days to rehearse for it. So we were bound and determined to play all of the stuff to the nines, you know, that we were doing, like the stuff we were playing with Eric and with Keith Richards.
Oh my God!
And so we got to play Happy and Sweet Little Rock and Roller with Keith. And with Clapton we played White Room and Little Wing.
Oh man, very nice.
Just, I tell you, that was the next leg wobbler.
I can't imagine.
That would have to be
catching up with Eric Clapton, and here comes Keith Richards out on stage, who was a surprise guest for the show. So you can imagine the place just went ape shit.
Now you know, Peter, there was growing up that you saw these people. You know, I'm sure you respected them as musicians when you were growing up.
Oh,
at no time in your life do you ever think one day I'm going to be standing on the stage playing with these guys.
Not only just standing there watching, actually playing with these guys.
I would probably be standing there just smiling. They'd probably be like, look at that nut job in the corner.
He's got a guitar in his hand. Not doing anything with it.
That is an amazing story, man.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I mean...
Well, it was a mind blower for that very reason, because I saw Clapton when I was a kid, you know, in the Greensboro Coliseum, and the Stones too. Had seen them a couple of times or a few times by that point. And, oh yeah, I was just, you know, just couldn't believe it.
That's one of those moments when it's like, well, if I don't live tomorrow,
it's been a good one.
It's been great.
It's been a good one, right?
That's what I figured. All right, I've done it. Been great.
Right.
Then Chrissy Hine was killer too. She sang "If It Makes You Happy" with Sheryl. And,
wow,
that is awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I love everybody on that stage. You know, except I don't know enough or listen to enough about the Dixie Chicks. But you know, other than that, like everybody that's on the stage, they're just phenomenal artists.
Yeah, that's like that is absolute red carpet.
Oh yeah.
You know, you just don't get anything. I mean, what do you can't top that.
I'm just curious. Riggs, what were you playing, and do you remember what any of them were playing?
Yes. Let's see. At that time, I was using a 50-watt Marshall combo. You know, it was around a 76 or 77, one of the fawn colored ones.
Okay, yeah. And
a super reverb. And let's see, guitar-wise, I had a white SG Special that I still have that too, and I was using that on the show, and that same Telly. Trying to think what else, and then that was and the Black Les Paul was there still. So
cool.
And then nice. Keith was using his usual. He had a Tweed Twin Telly. And just, you know, golden tone. I'll never forget at the rehearsals when we were rehearsing at SIR. Keith came in late one night. It was about midnight before he showed up. You know, he and his guys, you know, coming in, and so we were all on stage talking. And Sheryl goes after there was, you know, some good friendly talk, and he was really just so one of the guys, cool, totally non-star, like totally shooting the shit with all of us. And so Sheryl goes, well, we were thinking it'd be cool to play Happy. How do you feel about that? And he goes, oh yeah, sure. And he goes, 1, 2, 3, down, launched into it, you know. And we had our in-ears in, and, you know, all tuned and everything set volume-wise, and he goes up to the mic screaming that first line, you know, and we were all just fumbling to get our ears out. It's like, oh boy, here goes, we're rocking now. Yeah. And I tell you, he played at that rehearsal with as much energy as you see him on stage.
I bet, you know, I bet. He's another guy that just loves to play. He just wants to play. I mean, you know,
and an original rock star.
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, look at the winos. You
Yes.
know, I mean, that's Keith right there. That's, that's the real Keith there.
You're right. He just loves to play.
Yeah,
man.
So, and then who else? Clapton. He uses Strat. I'm probably the typical thing there. Strat and a Tweed Twin as well. Mm-hmm. Is what he was using.
That's before he had any signature amps, like he has now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And there was a funny story with that too. That on that day when we rehearsed with him the day before out at Central Park, it was the first chance we had to go through the stuff with him, and so we ran through White Room the first time, and like I said, we were trying to play it dead on to the nines, like the original version.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when he cuts into the solo, I was waiting to hear the wah, and there wasn't a wah to be found. I was like, what's up with that? And so I said something to his tech, Lee, at the time, and Cheryl's manager, Scooter, who's really close friends with Eric. And I said, so he's not using the wah. And they both said, well, tell him he's got to use the wah. And I was like, yeah, right.
He's going to tell Eric Clapton he's got to. That is too funny.
And I said, you tell him. You guys know him. He says, no, he won't listen to us. You tell him.
He won't listen to us.
Did you?
So I went up to him. Well,
Good.
First a little time went by, and Scooter goes, well, have you asked him yet? And I said, not yet. And he said, you're chicken. They were totally. Now hindsight, they were totally egging me on.
Oh, they were baiting you, man.
That's great.
And so I went up to him and I said, Eric, the solo, you used the wah back then, and he goes, the wah? Do you think I should use the wah? And I was like, well, yeah, it's so much the sound. I was trying to gently, it'd be cool if you used the wah. And so he looks over to the side of the stage and he goes, and holds his finger up in the air and he goes, Lee, bring me my wah. And Lee goes, right away, sir. Grabs the wah, brings it out, hooks it up for him, and then he stomps on it, like he hadn't played one in years or something, like it was something new. It was really funny. He just mashed it and and then when we did another run through, then he just commenced to tear it up. It was just like, oh my God.
Wow. That's that. Maybe it was a long lost friend for him. Do
you think I need the wah?
It was either a long lost friend, or it was either a long lost friend, or he does that to see who call him out on it.
Yeah.
Who's got the balls to ask me to use the wah?
That could have backfired. Because think about it. They have him go and they go over to the tech and go, hey, why didn't you tell me to use the wah? Or why didn't you have the wah out there waiting for me?
You're fired.
You're fired.
Yeah, no, I don't think it would have gone that way. Well, Jesus, what an awesome experience that was.
I would have quit the day after. That would have been like, forget it.
It don't get no better?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, right. Oh, come on. You're touring the world with Sheryl Crow. Like, that was absolutely a stellar moment, I'm sure, but you still get to tour with Sheryl Crow and, get up on stage.
You have so much fun. And, so over the years, we've had great bands throughout. That band that we had at that time lasted 11 years. And so in 2010, she changed directions, did a record with Doyle Bramhall Jr. or the second. That was more of an R&B thing. So at that time, she decided that she would take out the band that was on the record. That was all well and good. And so she did the change up. And at that time, I toured with Sarah McLachlan for a year and a half. And then just recently, in 2012, after Sarah's tour was finished and she had finished the tour with Doyle and that band, which was about a year and a half's worth or so, she wanted to put the old band back together. My other bandmates, they were all set to go out on tour with Noel Gallagher, and were committed to him for the next year or so. So I had my band that I had just assembled at the time, called Big Hat. And so some of the guys, I just thought, well, some of these guys would be with her. And so I just suggested to her manager, when we were brainstorming, trying to figure out what we put together a band, she had already booked all these dates and expecting to be able to put the old band back together. So he and I were trying to figure out who to use. And I said, well, my band could probably be pretty cool behind you and behind Sheryl. So that's how it ended up. And or at least it's four of us, so that's Audley Freed and I on guitar, and bass player Robert Kearns. That was his bandmate with Cry of Love. And at the time had been playing with Leonard Skinner and a drummer named Fred Eltringham. And, they're all buds and from previous, and then we had put our band together. So that is the core of the band now, and as well as we have Josh Grange on pedal steel and Jen Gunderman on keyboards.
Very nice.
Now, Audley played with the Dixie Chicks, is that correct? After Cry of Love?
Yes, and later years, way later years. By that time, he had moved to Nashville. And so, yes, Audley and Fred both had toured with the Dixie Chicks. And then after that, with the band the Courtyard Hounds, which were, two of the girls from the Chicks.
Wow. Yeah, because Audley had also done a stint with the Crows.
Yes.
Correct.
With the Black Crows.
Yes. The Cry of Love thing was his band. And that sounds as close to Free as Free.
Oh, wow.
Yes. If you or Early Bad Company.
Okay.
Yeah, and I actually got to see him or meet him on that tour, and was blown away by this guy that I'd never heard of. Mm-hmm. And I was like, my God, what an amazing player.
Yeah, I met him when he was out with the Crows. Like,
yeah.
Wow. This is, this is a good fit too,
Yeah, he's one of those guys that just flies under the radar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they had a really strong following with Cry of Love. They had some success with their first record, and so he still has a ton of fans that show up at the gigs, from the Cry of Love days. Yeah. And I had met him during his time with the Black Crows. When we became really good friends.
That is so wild.
We always thought it'd be fun to play together and do something, and I always had sort of the idea of putting a band together with him would be way cool, and so that's what Big Happy came along with, a singer that's named Keith Gaddis, and this B3 player here in Atlanta named Mike Stubblefield, who's an amazing, he's one of the last of the real deal Jimmy Smith kind of B3 players.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've heard his name before. Yeah.
So it's been cool, and so with the new band now that we have with Sheryl, that's, I guess, 2.5 years in, we are just having the time of our lives. It's a great band. She's happy with it. And
you guys get to rehearse.
Yeah, I'm 4 hours away. Atlanta's not far at all from Nashville. And yeah, it's just great. Couldn't be happier with the whole scenario now. And Sheryl feels the same.
That's great.
So the acts of choice now? With,
the guitars of choice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Probably still the same, Peter?
Well, the Telecaster is still there. I still use that Telecustom, and then the Firebird has been the main Gibson sort of P90 guitar. I find Tellies and P90s seem to fit, and Sheryl seemed the best.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And I was using a Les Paul Jr. For the year prior to when I bought the Firebird. And let's see, I use a couple of Elliott guitars. I don't know if you're familiar with Andy Elliott yet.
No.
Incredible luthier, really high quality guitar master builder out of North Carolina.
North Carolina. I was asking where he was based out of. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, out in the foothills in Hiddenite, North Carolina.
Hiddenite.
Yes.
We'll have to check it out. Maybe put a link up on the site.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, he's magical. It's every guitar. You'll see what I mean whenever you pick up one of his guitars, because he hand cuts some necks, bodies. He builds on the Fender theme, but his build quality is impeccable, and everything is from scratch, even down to the pick guards. He winds his own pickups, the whole 9 yards. So
that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I used a couple of his guitars, and we made a signature guitar back that was based on a Jazzmaster, and
cool.
so what else do I have? And also I have a Duesenberg that I use. They made a signature guitar for me that I use for slide primarily, that has their multi-bender. So I had been using a guitar with a Bigsby palm pedal for years to sort of do faux pedal steel licks with slide, and then they presented this guitar to me.
Wow. Gonna have to look into that.
Yeah.
The multi-bender, huh?
Yep, and so the model's called the Dragster Multi-Bender or something like that.
That's very cool. They're coming out with some cool stuff.
Yes.
Duesenberg.
Yeah.
You know,
They got very high quality guitars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they really are. Every one I play of those are great too. I'm just, I'm humbled and honored to have a relationship with both Duesenberg and with Andy Elliott, with his guitars too. So
very nice. Now, have you gone the way, gear-wise, amplification-wise, that a lot of guys have either gone to or kind of been forced into? Maybe some guys I'm sure some guys like it, but have you gone the digital modeling thing, or are you staying true to real amps in the back line?
I am still with real amps in the background, and obviously I should be.
Yes, that's what I was getting to. But sometimes it's, there are plenty of guys out there where it's really not their choice. It's for cartage purposes or for repeatability night after night. Some guys are really kind of put in a position where they're expected to use like fractals and things like that. But, I'm all about moving some air behind you, in the back line. So
me too. And I've always tried to preserve that. And, Sheryl appreciates that as well. And so we've figured out a way to do it on stage. For one, early on, just like you, you were the father of the low powered amp in the boutique world, and soon after that first year with Sheryl, and then also the following year, I toured with Don Henley.
Wow.
Same deal, using the Marshall and the Super Reverb, which ended up with both plexiglass and attenuators on it.
Wow.
Our stage volume was so low that on ballads, I could hear the front row talking.
Oh my God.
Oh, man.
Wow.
And so it was after that point that I said, you know what, I got to figure this out. I got to find some lower powered amps that sound big.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them that I'd come across, that was right when the whole 18-watt Marshall craze was cranking up, and 18watt.com forum and all that kind of stuff. And I met the guy in Chattanooga, Tennessee, who had started Balls Amplifiers, and he was simply making the amplifiers at night. He was a banker by day, bank executive by day, and making these amps at night and on the weekends for the fun of it, and made a really great 18-watt Marshall clone.
Mm-hmm.
I would have bought it just for the name.
Balls.
Yeah, exactly. So, I heard that and I go, well, there it is. There's my Marshall sound. I can, at a proper stage volume. And so it moved on, to next thing I know, I'm starting an amp company with my good friend, and we can get into that. But getting back to what you're saying about the digital modeling, yes, I've had friends that have been on me saying, man, have you checked out the Kemper yet? Have you checked out the Kemper? And they're saying it's really, really good. And I'm totally open to checking it out, and I could entirely see the advantage of having it in certain scenarios. But at least in our band scenario, Sheryl does appreciate having the sound on stage. She feeds off of it just as much as anyone else.
That's cool.
Does. And I am a hard line, staunch believer that as a guitarist, as a lead guitarist, you got to have the amp behind you. I mean, it is a part of the instrument. You know, having the amp mic'd off stage and all that, you know, if you have to do it, that's fine. In certain situations, it works fine. When I was with Sarah McLachlan, it worked great. I had this big panoramic sound, and, you know, I had ways to work around it. And it was proper for her situation. But, you know, with our band, you got to feel it. It's just like you got to feel the drums, you know?
Yep.
So,
well, God bless you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we do is we just aim the amps a little off to the side. Yeah, we're using low-powered amps, one speaker instead of 2 12 cabs, and we use baffles, you know, little gobos. We made these gobos for the stage.
Yeah, you know, a lot of guys do that, or they'll do the scrims, and sometimes they'll put a little sound absorption behind the scrims, and you know, just little ways to keep it down. I like to see the amplifier on stage, but you know.
Could you imagine if they told Angus Young you got to go through the earth would come off its axis.
You can't play a real amp anymore.
Yeah, no kidding. And that's my point. I mean, think about all the bands that we saw back in the day, you know? And to me, especially in a club, that's half of it is hearing the stage volume. You know, I'd rather in a small club, the PA just be supporting the drums and the vocals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And maybe pushing a solo here and there, but I prefer to hear it blowing off the stage. You know, I'd go to see the Satellites, you know, or the Hellhounds, which was the Georgia Satellites other spinoff. You know, they'd play weekly in Atlanta and just blasting 50-watt Marshalls and high watts off stage. And it was heaven. That was what I wanted to see, you know.
Yeah. Right.
And if you had enough beers in you, it didn't matter.
You know, but that's what you want to feel, too, because there is an interaction that's missing when that's not there, you know. Between the guitar and the amp and the player.
Yeah, totally. And then through the PA, it sounds okay through the PA, but it doesn't sound the same as when you're getting your face blown off by a 412 cab.
No.
You know, but nowadays, even getting a little air in your face from a 112 cab is still gratifying enough, you know. Everything has their place. Nobody's got to play with full stacks of 412s and 300-watt Marshalls anymore.
Isn't that weird? As humans, we have to ingest tons of water now, and we can't listen to loud music when you go to a concert.
Wait, what?
Exactly. I mean,
granted, there is that factor. You know, I can't stand in front of a loud Marshall anymore. But
right. But I mean, you know, at least you've got some air movement, and I really dig the fact that Sheryl digs that too. I think that's very cool. There's, you know, a lot of times now, the only air moving on the stage is the acoustic drum kit. You know, and there's
behind plexiglass.
Tell me that is not weird.
Oh my God. That is my pet peeve, is drums behind plexiglass. I just can't handle that.
I can't imagine what that sounds like to the drummer. It's got to be, because, you know, drums are loud, right? You're hitting them. When you start hearing them extra loud because you got this wall in front of you,
right?
You probably would let up. You know, be like,
it may cause you to play different. I don't know.
Yeah, you'd be knocking your own head off.
We'll have to ask a drummer that plays behind a prison like that.
That's a good point, especially when you hit a cymbal. It's like, ow, you know?
Yeah, it's in your own face. It's like you're punching yourself.
Yeah, well, the rest of the band's happy, so who cares about the drummer? You know? He's just a drummer. No, that's really good. That's good to hear.
That is a cool thing.
You know, let's expound a little bit on 65. You know, you touched base on that. Let's talk about that some, man.
Yeah, well, you know, we're on 10 years now. Back in 2003 or 2004 was when we became official. When we went to our first NAMM show. But that was pretty much just born out of my partner and I dreaming and scheming up a low-powered amp alternatives, you know, and I had hipped him to the 18-watt Marshall thing, and he went on to 18watt.com, and he was living out in L.A., or he still lives in L.A., and, you know, so I'd talk to him periodically, and he said, hey, you know what? I'm building my own 18-watt now. I said, I had no idea you did that. And by that time, you know, I had learned how to do all the proper maintenance on my vintage amps and do upgrades. I used to read Vintage Guitar Magazine and, forget what else. There was some other newspaper mag that your pal from Kendrick that would always have the articles in.
Gerald Weber. Was that Tone Quest?
It was prior to Tone Quest.
Prior to Tone
Quest. And he wrote a column for some gear newspaper.
I remember Vintage Guitar was one of the earliest ones.
And maybe it was an earlier version of Vintage Guitar. It might have been the early versions of Vintage Guitar. Was that in a newspaper form?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there you go. That's what it was then.
Yes.
And so I'd read his column, and I'd learn how to do the mods myself to my Fenders and Marshalls. So it got a hang of it enough, and so after the third conversation I had with Dan was him telling me that a buddy had offered to put up the money to build his own amps and start his own amp company, and wanted me to be his first artist. And I said, hey, why don't we just do this? Why don't we do this together? Because I've got some ideas of what I'd like, and let's just embark on this together. And so that's what we did. Nice. And our first version amp is the London that we still have, and its foundation was, we figured out that an 18-watt Marshall, there was a lot of similarities in the circuit of an 18-watt Marshall, or at least in the power stage, and an AC-15. And we sort of used that as a launch pad, and we figured, well, we could sort of combine the two, but we wanted to make the output transformer in particular a little more robust and a little more up-to-date sounding, to handle pedals better, things of that sort. And just worked on that for a while and came up with our own model, and that's what we took into a summer NAMM show and got orders. And then by January 2005, there was a store here in Atlanta, Midtown Music, and Dave of Midtown Music. I attribute a lot of our initial success to him, because he put in major orders. He put in 10-piece orders twice.
Wow!
And
that's a nice commitment. That is a nice commitment.
That got us off and running. And wow. And I tell you, it's a labor of love. We haven't made a lot of money off of this thing, but we make a living, and more than anything, it's just been so much fun just to create an amp a year almost. It's almost, I equate it to like making a new record each year.
Right.
Where you get an idea for a new amp and you want to present a new amp at the next NAMM show and that kind of thing. But it was more fun to just go, oh man, check this amp that I found. Like at one point it was let me look it over here. I forget the name at the moment. It was a Selmer treble and bass. That I picked up over in England on a tour. That sounded killer. And so I thought, there's aspects of this front end that would be cool. What if we put this front end on, 4 EL84s? And that was sort of our launching point for the prototype of the Marquee that we had at the time, this head called the Marquee. And, and then there was another one. Then I got into Ampegs and collected a bunch of old Ampegs, and we came out with a model using the, the 5991 tube. Is that it?
Yes. The output tube.
Which is a really cool tube, and thought, okay, let's create something that gets that sound that's sort of like the sound of Sticky Fingers record.
Yeah. Well, it's a 5991 or 5891. I cannot remember.
5891, something like that.
Yeah, but that would have been like checkerboard Tolex Ampeg era, if I'm remembering correctly. Sticky Fingers, which is actually, I love the sound of the Stones in that era. And I'm pretty sure that was the next generation of Ampegs, which would have been like V2s, V4s, SVTs, the early that era, because I know they were, they used a lot of those on stage, and there's a mid-range circuit that they use in that V4 that I always loved, because you could always you could set it. It had 3 different frequency ranges, the center one being 1K, and you could set it at 1K and boost 1K about 12 dB, and you could get any guitar to have, continuous feedback forever. It would probably wipe out your hearing at some point in time, but man, you could get these guitars to sustain forever, without like dirt pedals or anything. It was a frequency that just worked with the guitar.
Wow.
And I always think, the thought always occurs to me every so often. It's like, man, you should do an amp with that mid-range circuit in it, because nobody's ever done it before, and it is so cool. But
but you call it, is it Bandaxle circuit? Is that how you say it?
Yeah. Well, that might be a little bit different. I know the big difference in that particular Ampeg mid-range, the one with the 3 selectable center frequencies, is they actually use an inductor in there, and the inductor's got like different taps on it that you tap to get the frequency ranges, and nobody makes a mid-range circuit with like an active kind of inductor in it, and it's just so unique, and it came and went in that series of amps, and I don't know anybody else that's ever done it, man. And I just thought it was so unique and cool, and Well,
it was. You could. I used to use a VT40 in my high school days, and I still have one now. And for that very reason, you could put a Strat through it, and it was that Ron Wood and Faces tone.
Oh yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
you can make a Strat crank, by just like you say, boosting that mid range. And you were off and running.
Yeah. Well, that's where a guitar lives. It's a mid-range instrument, Yep. We've had this conversation before on the show where it's, all the guys that are into the scooped mid and tons of highs and tons of lows, and
they don't know what they're missing.
Yeah, right. The final mix is missing guitar is what it's missing.
And mid-range.
Right, because it's not there,
Exactly.
But yeah. Well, anyway, I'm getting too far off topic with 65. But you've, and that's very cool, because everybody, looks at the next NAMM and goes, all right, what's the next amp we can build to launch next year?
Yeah.
And that's always something to look forward to and to effort towards, and different ideas come from different places, so that one was Ampeg. And, how many models do you guys have nowadays?
Well, we have, I think there's about 8 models maybe now. We fluctuate. Some fall away. Yeah. And I think on our website now it's, we've focused more on 8 models, I believe.
Okay. Now you have, you've got like what, blue badge and red badge?
10 models now. I'm looking at the website.
Wow, there you go.
The red badge and the blue badge. And the red badge, they're all hand wired. The simply with the red badge, we wanted to make one more, or a line more affordable. Mm-hmm. And we have 2 that are on that line. We have the Ventura and also the London Pro.
Okay.
And so, they're in a more affordable price range, and the Ventura is really cool. It's a 266 head and combo. Honestly, the head version's $1,500. It's $1,495. So it's still high quality. Our blue label. The big difference with that is mainly in the transformers. We use the Mercury Magnetics transformers in our blue line.
Wow.
And, just wanted to just use the whatever components we felt gave us the tone that we wanted.
Right.
No compromise, just like you, that's how you feel about doing these things.
Yeah. I really do try to put things together that seem to work the best for me. I've been using the same transformer guys for since we started Buddha back in the day, and they just do a real good job for me. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of Mercury too. I know the guys at Mercury, and I'm a big fan of those, and I'm a proponent of them whenever whenever someone asks me about it,
Yeah.
But I go to my guys and I go, okay, let's make this, and that's what they do. That's what they do.
You know what's funny, and because I work in the computer world and I see all the new technology with amplifiers and things like, in this musical world, that whole if it's not broke, don't fix it thing does carry.
Oh yeah.
Where in the computer world, it's like, no, we got to move forward because in 3 months, this is going to be so outdated, it's going to be useless to us. But it's so neat how that side of it stays at that status quo. And that's, I think, is a really cool thing because there isn't, like we've had this conversation, there isn't much out there that still holds the tradition back and maintains that. Our lives are just so, what's happening now,
Right. I mean, with amps, it's, let's face it, it's a variation on a theme, and there's a lot of variation, and there are a lot of unique ideas out there. Look at Peter, him and Dan putting together, okay, I think this would sound great with this, and that's never been made before, so let's make that. It's, again, a variation on a theme, but very unique ideas behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And
sort of like the mid-range knob.
Right, the mid-range knob. But they did try to fix amps, back in the 70s, and they used these things called transistors, and
it lasted.
And there are a couple of good sounding amps. We've talked about Lab Series back in the past and how some of those can be very cool. I mean, there is still one, I think, standard out there that has stood the test of time. The damn thing is still made. And it's one of the best clean sounds. Like it's almost sterile clean.
Roland?
The JC120.
Yes.
The JC series. And that seems to be a mainstay. If somebody says, I want clean, they're thinking, I want Roland clean. I want jazz chorus clean,
And what's weird about that amp, they never even changed the knobs on it. The switches, everything is identical to day one.
From the 80s, yeah.
From a company like Roland.
Yeah. They know when they've got something good, thank God they're not breaking it, because there still is,
what is that
use for that amplifier in a lot of instances,
What does that division look like, though? Is it like 5 old Japanese guys that have been there since like day one? They just refuse to go away.
Right.
You're right. I mean, that is a sound. And even some of the earlier 70s transistor-based, solid-state-based amps were pretty darn good sounding. They're like, every once in a while, check out an old acoustic.
Oh, yeah.
Those things sounded great. I have this one Ampeg that's a little practice amp that is a great clean amp. Yeah, it was intended to be clean, and it's a solid state.
Mm-hmm.
Little 110 combo that I have, and so there's some good things. Aside from nowadays, the Kemper and things like that, where there are, and the Fractal, where there's real advancements being made. I mean, guitar amps are electronics 101 in their basic form. And right. It's just like you said, Jeff, it's variations on a theme, just like making music. It's all totally subjective. And if you hear, in our case, I feel we're very fortunate to be able to hear or have an idea in mind of a tone we'd like to get or something that we want to achieve, and be able to accomplish it either by modifying your amp. It can be a really simple modification to an existing amp, or creating your own.
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is that with today's technology, the Kemper and the Fractal and all that, they're just trying to be a good version of what already exists.
Yep.
I mean,
it is true.
Bow down before the tube,
Yeah. And they say, it's lighter, so it's not as bad. I'm like, once again, here we go. We can't hear loud noise. We need a lot of water in our bodies.
I'll give you lighter when it comes to transportation costs and cartage and everything. I get that. If you're somebody that's going to do a European tour and you're like a U.S. based act
and you're
or something,
small
and you need to get all your sounds because the proper sounds are very important. Some more important than others. Some acts really heavily rely on very specific sounds. Other guys, you give them a guitar and an amp and they sound like what they're going to sound like, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
But for cartage purposes and being green by saving fuel and moving around, I get all that, and I get it, but they're still trying to be what we all love.
There's a company called UPS too. Just ship it ahead of you.
I know. Look, and there are even surcharges, fuel surcharges on that we all ship. We all know.
I know.
So, but
you got me thinking because we'll be up against the very same thing. We're touring in the UK in the fall in October, and it is that whole thing of we got to travel cheap and carry everything on board that we're going to use and rent backline otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And it is. It's the industry is definitely clamped down financially now, and it's really difficult to go tour overseas and keep your costs down. You can't be throwing or it's hard to afford even throwing your whole backline into a what do you call it, in a box and shipping it overseas.
A container, yeah.
Container and sending it over. Even that's a costly affair. So
most guys that I know that are touring on a smaller scale, they have really great pedal boards put together because a good pedal board and a nice clean palette to work with. Fender Twins are ubiquitous everywhere. It's either if you can get a Fender Twin or if you can get a basic Marshall, if that's your tone.
Yeah.
Or you can get if you're a bass player, either an SVT or, some guys like the GK stuff, some guys like the new Mark bass, and that stuff's all over the place.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys travel with a couple of guitars and a really nice pedal board.
And then they get the back line.
Right, and then just go, and that's how they're doing the tour.
Or you could do what the Allman Brothers do and just never leave the country.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Yeah.
But hey, if you got a chance to see the world, go see the damn world, man. Travel, learn.
Yes, that's true.
Travel and learn. Well, Peter, I think that unless you've got something else to add, I think that might have brought us full circle. And
yeah, I've probably kept you guys on way longer than we need to be on.
Oh no, it's fine,
it's
man.
All good, man.
It's all good. Stories are good. Learning about gear stuff. I love learning about people's companies and things. A lot of times we have company owners, which you are one of, on, and I love getting their start of the company stories and things like that. Our listeners really dig that.
Yes.
So
do you have any websites? I know you have one for 65 amps, but any personal ones or anything?
Yes, let's see. Well, not a personal website, but pretty much I direct everybody to the Big Hat site that is bighatband.com.
Okay, that'll be on our site.
Cool, yeah. And even though the Big Hat Band is on hiatus, but the members are not.
Yes.
So, but I'm sure you can still get the material and anything you want on there.
I'll do all the sites. I'll do, I'll do Cheryl's. I'll do that one. I'll do 65 amps.
Sure.
We'll put them all up there for you.
Absolutely. And they stay up with the episode,
forever.
In perpetuity.
Yes.
So,
all right.
Until the EMP hits the earth, and then we won't be calling you anymore either.
But the tubes will still work.
That's right. We'll still have rock and roll.
That's right.
The tubes will still work. Exactly right. When everything else, all the computers have gone down, then we go, maybe I'll play guitar again.
That's right. There will be a power grid.
I was going to say you may have to pedal a bicycle to get a generator going, but you'll be good.
That's right. I'll hit Home Depot for a generator, and then
there you go.
And throw away my iPhone and get back to playing again.
There you go.
That's right. Well, Peter, thank you for taking the time. It's been a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem, man.
I appreciate it.
Continue making music. Safe travels. We wish everyone well, and much more continued success to you, my friend.
Thank you very much. Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks for having me on the show. It's really cool, man.
You're welcome. And we'll let you know when this is up, and you can tell your friends.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, Peter. Have a great rest of the day, my friend. Okay, then. Well, geez, how cool was that?
What a great guy.
Yeah, he really is a wonderful guy. He really is.
Yeah.
And nice gig. Nice gig he has there,
I just, it's amazing. he got to play with all those.
Yeah.
It just, wow. I mean, what do you do at that point? I'm like, okay, and Sheryl Crow, no slouch. It's Sheryl Crow.
Oh, yeah.
But then you're staying on stage with Eric Clapton and Keith Richards.
He's right. It's one of those moments in life. But what do? You play.
Yeah.
You play. And
you kind of get it together. And then you go and do your thing.
Hopefully you don't go over the top.
Yes.
And everybody's looking at you like, look at this fool.
Yeah.
He's trying to put in every note he ever learned in 3 seconds here.
Yeah.
You just play, and you hope it all just gels together well. And with players that caliber, it usually does. If you're not trying to be something you're not, and you're good enough to be invited up into that situation in the first place, you be you.
Wow.
You be you.
Yeah.
That's what you do, because you got you there in the first place. Don't try to be somebody else. You be you.
Go over to Clapton and tell him he needs to put the wow on.
You know what? That must have been a setup. and they just see who takes the bait.
Yeah.
That would be funny.
Go tell him.
Maybe not, but
Why don't you go tell him?
Yeah. I'm not going to tell him. You tell him. Get Peter to tell him.
If you ever, and real quick, if you ever see the Buddy, I'm sorry, the Chuck Berry thing
documentary.
Yes, where Eric and Keith go and do their thing. Keith says something to Chuck about his sound, and there's almost a fist fight that breaks out.
No, this is how Chuck Berry does it.
Yeah. Chuck had some issues, with jail and stuff. So, there's a history there. But,
he preceded all of them, and Chuck, I guess if Chuck wants to do it like Chuck should do it like Chuck.
You know what? It's Chuck.
It is Chuck.
And that's how it works.
That's it. Worked for him.
So until next time, my friend, I am. I am Mick Marcelino.
And that just leaves me to be Jeff Bober, and I'm damn happy to be here with you.
Yes, and we are saying...
onward.
Be sure to follow the show on Twitter @AmsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and Lick of the Week with Dave Nassi, visit our website, amsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.